going to try to show something that we've been working on for the last couple of months in Dagger Cloud. We've been working in this with the whole team, with Andrea, Alex, mostly. The last couple of months, we've been working on basically having a good display of what you executed in Dagger in the browser. And this is known as Dagger Cloud, as you know. So we wanted to share it's like we wanted to comment on the journey that we've been through from the first prototype until now. So a couple of months ago, we started with Go prototype. We started in Go and HTMX. We had this really cool prototype of what we call calls in the past. This was like super technical and super like really granular details of your Dagger functions. And this kind of evolved to where we are now. The cool thing about this is that we had to basically translate everything that was done in this prototype, that you can actually access it today here at dagviz.fly. In this link, you'll be able to visit and see how it was before at first. This was awesome because it was the first prototype that Alex made, and we had to build on top of this. And to get where we are now, we had to make a lot of UX decisions, listening to users, listening to ourselves, like saying, okay, I'm trying to debug this. What do I need to see to be able to actually have information available in front of me to know what's happening to my function? This is why we introduced the concept of hoisting, which is basically having the error on top of the screen. We also added sham-tos and troubles inside the views. We'll be showcasing everything. If you've been using Dagger Cloud, you know what we're talking about. And if you haven't, we are going to have a little demo afterwards so you can see how that works. And we also had one tiny fun thing that was actually like representing what we call, let's say, objects of different functions and modules. And that's where the invaders came, and these funny icons to represent that came alive. We're going to showcase that in a bit. So yeah, that's basically the three top UX decisions that we had to make in order to make debugging easier in Cloud. There was a problem though, which is that Dagger Cloud currently ingests a lot of OpenTelemetry. And whenever you execute any kind of function, you're going to basically emit a lot of what in OpenTelemetry is called spans. And it's actually hard to manipulate those spans because there are actually in the realm of thousands of them. And everything that's like rendering and computing thousands and thousands of elements in React mostly can be dangerous if all the computation is done client-side, basically. The current architecture that we have in our cloud, all the computation is done client-side. Not all of them, but most of it. And we had to basically optimize for that kind of performance, where we wanted to not obliterate the user's CPU, basically. And we wanted to be really careful about what in the React world is called pre-rendering, and basically committing a new change to the view that will basically make all the computation that was done at first happen again. We went through a lot of phases to make this work. We actually started with what is called polling. Polling is basically setting an interval for like 4 seconds, and each 4 seconds send the same request. And we realized that in some cases, if you had the same tab open, you will like payload, the total payload of that session will be like in the hundreds of megabytes. So that's when we realized we had to switch to subscriptions instead of polling to improve performance and also to reduce the payload size. And in order to implement subscriptions, we needed to actually choose between 2 different protocols, either WebSockets or server-side events. This was a cool journey because if you worked with WebSockets before, you know that authentication is actually hard. Headers and basically sending data for authentication authorization is actually really hard in WebSockets. So we actually ended up with a stack that is on top of server-side events and Apollo Cache. I'm gonna close this for a bit, and we are gonna show you what we've been working on for the last month. The last month, we've been working mostly on, instead of a specific trace, like how to browse between them. So if you actually go to Dagger Cloud today, you'll get this view. This view represents a group of traces that are related basically by Git metadata. This is exactly what you will see if you go, for example, to a GitHub PR and you go to the checks tab. You'll see, for example, all the different actions in GitHub that have been running. And what we show in Dagger Cloud is basically the same, but in terms of traces. So for example, when entering GitHub PR here and going to the GitHub checks here, you'll see that you have Dagger Cloud independent traces. And this is a bit tedious to browse, mostly because the GitHub drawer is like it's tiny and you have to basically find traces. It's actually hard to know what's happening here because the title is truncated and the UX actually is not cool to figure out what's happening. So we added some grouping here to be able to know which traces are triggered by the same point in history in a repository. If you enter here, for example, you're going to see one of the traces executed by that PR, and you're going to see the new layout that evolved over time compared to what we shown before. So in this view, you also see that we have actually two tabs, which are distinct. This is the work that Andrea helped us to make in the engine, which also came with its caveats around rotating tokens and everything for authentication, which is basically sending local traces. So instead of sending groups from your PRs by basically checking out a point in your repo and executing functions, you can go to your terminal here. I have Dagger, Dagger repo here. And I can do Dagger login Dagger, for example. And this actually authenticates me in an organization in Dagger Cloud. So the traces that I'm going to send from now on in my local machine are going to be sent to the local tab of Dagger Cloud. So if I do, for example, Dagger functions, you'll see this trace here in the Dagger organization because that's where I logged in, and in real time because that's the way that we wanted to actually Dagger Cloud to work. We wanted for traces to be instant and be debuggable in the new UI instantly, basically. So if I do, for example, suppose that I have two organizations. We had an internal organization called Guachines, which is a word in Argentina. It's like dudes. So I'm going to log into this organization and I'm going to send, say, another function from a different module, let's say. You can actually see the Dagger login Guachines like happening here in the Dagger org. And this is going to be in the Guachines org, the new trace that I'm running right now. So this trace is running. And because we implemented subscriptions, you can see that it's in real time as well. It's really fast. And it's basically, let me run it again so you can see how quickly it basically happens when you start it. So once this is here, let's try. I think cache is going to beat me. Oh, it didn't. Because everything is cache is going to be run faster. You're going to see that as soon as this fails almost. So that's basically what the performance that we went to aim for. So well, that's basically the history of Dagger through time. Mostly, I tried to tell it like in a span of 5 to 10 minutes. I don't know if I made it. And that's also Dagger login for you. I'm gonna let Alex talk because this is from the book from both of us, and I've been talking like nonstop for I don't know how much.
Cool. Thanks. Yeah, so some new UI changes just shipped recently. Should be a bit more polished. So before a build like this, you would come in and you'd see like a sea of like errors hoisted up here, and like there was little extra bits of context shown for each error, so it ended up being just like super verbose and pushing the content down on the page. So now there's this new navigation element up top. It's kind of like a flame chart. So the idea is instead of hoisting things up here, now you can just sort of scan around here. So you just look for like an error section, and then you click into it. And then we put an error summary at the bottom, and we collapse things by default. Before this would expand failures by default, but that was like taking performance. So now that we collapse by default, we can actually afford to use the rest of the page because the top level ends up being pretty short. So yeah, now you have like a nice sort of error summary. But what's cool is you can actually jump into here and you'll see that there's a lot more detail revealed. So this is kind of like a fractal sort of deep dive experience navigation thing that you can do. So if I want to see like what happened under here, then I can explore that. I think I had a simpler example too. Oh, actually, no, this was a simple example. It's just everything is complicated. Here's another one with engine lint and sort of jumping through the error summary and jumping straight down into what actually failed. Can do that from up top as well, I think. Yeah, here it is. Yeah, and that's basically it. There's like a bunch of other little polish. Like you might have noticed the lines might be more intuitive. Before it used to like, there used to be a line that continued down here, which kind of made it look like it kept going past that point. And now it's just this little line that kind of snakes around. It looks a little funny when you have a bunch of things like snaking back, but I haven't figured out what to do with that yet. I'm not that good at front end. Yeah, I think that's it. Just mostly polishing. You might notice small things like now there's a more noticeable outline when you have something focused. Before I noticed like you would click something and there'd just be like a tiny little line here and it was really hard to see. But now that we got rid of some of those lines, it's a little less overkill, I think, to have this outline here. So yeah, that's it. Plenty of feedback welcome. Like we've received a lot of really valuable feedback from the community. So if you see something, say something, let us know if it's like slow in a certain scenario or if some UI is confusing. Oh yeah, sorry. Thanks for the prompt. Coming up next, we'll probably focus on browsing by function. So you might have noticed this giant like bit of text up here. What we really want is something closer to this where you just deep dive directly into a function call. And this is what we show in the GitHub checks list instead. So now you just see like Dagger engine lint or something. After that, analytics. So building on identifying things by functions, we'll want to see like, how is this function like slower than it usually is? Like, how does it look over time? Like, did it like trend getting slower? And yeah, more optimizations. Can also like jump into here and like, oh yeah, I forgot to mention, like open a terminal and like start debugging directly. No, I'm kidding. We don't have that yet, but maybe sometime soon. That would be great. All right.
It's coming list.